So in this episode, we're going to reveal if this oil test will tell me if my engine is wearing itself out. Let's go. Welcome back to DONSLIFE and welcome to the channel. Today's video is the exciting world of oil sample testing. Because if you've been watching and keeping up with the 6.2 liter L87 engine recall, then you'll know what I'm talking about. Now this is my GMC Sierra AT4. This is a 2021. This is not part of the active recall. So for its entire life, it's been prescribed 0W20 synthetic, which needed to be Dexos 1 Gen 3 approved. But we also have a 2022 Cadillac Escalade parked outside, which was part of the active recall. It passed the PICO test, but then GM said you have to use Mobil 1 0W40 supercar oil going forward. That was until an announcement that I reported on in January 2026. They now recommend Mobil 1 0W40 FS, European Car Formula oil. Why the change? Well, it needs to be Dexos R approved. So for the recalled engines that pass the PICO test, they're supposed to use a 0W40 oil that's Dexos R approved. This specific blend is now the recommendation to the dealerships by GM when replacing the oil in these engines. Now the reason I'm going into this level of detail was because I've been reporting on this for a little while and people are actually interested in these oil choices. Now you may or may not know, but this truck right here just ran out of powertrain warranty. It's February 2026 and I bought it in February 2021. It's at 55,000 kilometers. That means it's had 10 or 11 oil changes, and every single one of those oil changes has been a 0W20 motor oil. You know, the thin as water stuff. So I'm going to get a sample of the AC Delco Dexos 1 Generation 3 oil that's in this engine right now, and we're going to send it away for lab testing. Now, part of the reason why I'm going to use this newly prescribed oil on my truck and not a 0W20 again is because I want to see what this does to my engine, and we'll get testing done again in about 5,000 kilometers, 3,000 miles. But Mrs. DONSLIFE's Escalade is also going in for an oil change right away, and they're probably going to put this in instead of the supercar oil. Just really curious what this oil is going to be like for the next couple months, because this truck has always had 0W20. If I like the 0W40 weight, then I'll probably go to the Pennzoil Ultra Platinum next. I just couldn't get it for this video, so I thought I'll compare apples to apples once this oil is in Mrs. DONSLIFE's vehicle as well. Sorry if it seems confusing, but by the end of this video, we should have lab tests back, be able to just see what's going on, and then we'll come back after 3,000 miles, 5,000 kilometers, and then we'll test this Mobil 1 FS 0W40 and see what those results look like. Now the truck's been running, so the engine's still warm. Let's drain that oil. Tip of the day, if you're already under your truck getting dirty, check your diff fluid as well. I checked mine, it was good, but there was a time once before when it was down about half a liter, and I don't know how it got to that level, but it's been good now for about 2.5 years. Well, that's done. We got our nice warm sample. Then we just have to fill out the information sheet here, and then we drop it off and wait for the results to come back. Well, I thought I'd chop up my filter and have a look. A couple little flakes here and there. Other side's clean. But from what I know, that's pretty normal. Just have a little flake here and there. But we'll wait for the oil analysis and see what's what. So is my engine wearing itself out? Well, this oil analysis should tell us, or at least give us any hints if there's bigger problems. Now, originally I was going to get my sampling done by Blackstone Laboratories. This printout is from a viewer that sent me their results. I asked for the kit, I even got a confirmation email, and the testing kit never arrived. So instead I found a local outfit, Boss Lubricants, and they seem to test pretty much all the same things that are on the Blackstone Laboratories report. So wherever you live, you could check out Blackstone, you could check out Boss Lubricants if you're in Canada, but I know there's also other reputable testing facilities out there. Now I am going to bounce around on the report, which I'll show the report on screen so you can check everything out as I speak about it. Now I'm not an oil expert, so I did research into my descriptions of most of these things that we're going to talk about, but please take it with a grain of salt. This is my opinion, and do your own research or consult an expert. This is just my understanding or interpretation of the report for my truck. Now let's start at the top so we don't lose the plot. This sample is labeled as a 6.2 liter gasoline engine in a GMC Sierra with 55,000 kilometers on the unit and 5,000 kilometers on the oil that was tested. The oil type is listed as AC Delco 0W20. The sample date is from February 14th, 2026, Valentine's Day. See the cool stuff that I do on Valentine's Day? And the results were verified on February 27th, 2026. Now, before we touch on any of the metals and the quantities that were found or not found in the oil, it's a good idea to look at oil killers. Now, petroleum companies offer used oil guidance. If any of these oil killers were present, then it could be a problem. So that's any glycol, fuel dilution above 5%, and water above 0.1%. These would be abnormal for engine oil. On this report, I have no presentation of glycol or coolant, fuel dilution is a no, and water is 0.0%, and solids are 0.0%. So that portion is clean. So next I'll draw your attention to viscosity. At 100 degrees Celsius, mine measured at 7.575 CST, which falls within the typical 0W20 window. So what that tells us is that my oil didn't shear out of grade within this oil change interval. So it appears we're at a good starting point. Now let's get into the wear metals. These are the ones that matter most when it comes to mechanical health. Now for context, I live in a cold environment, so the oil sample that I sent in was from the coldest months that we have in my area of Canada. Now for iron, mine came in at 60 parts per million, which is the same as 60 milligrams per kilograms. It's the same ratio. So if you're reading ahead on the chart, milligrams per kilogram is the same as parts per million. So iron would come from the cylinder liners, crankshaft, camshaft, the rotating assembly. So typical 5,000 kilometer range would be 10 to 50 parts per million, which would be normal. 50 to 80 parts per million would be moderate, and 80 plus we'd have to watch closely. My result is slightly elevated, but it's not alarming. Given that the lab in the comment section rated me as A is low, that's for my cylinder, piston, and ring wear, this likely reflects just normal use for the amount of mileage that I have. So right now it's not a main concern, but it's something that we want to keep an eye on for any trends. My aluminum content was 15 parts per million. That comes from the pistons, bearings, block aluminum components. The typical range is 5 to 20 ppm. So my result is normal, there's no issues here. Totally acceptable. Copper came in at 6 parts per million. That's coming from your bearings, your oil cooler. Typical range is 3 to 20 parts per million. My result came in as very good, so no bearing concern. Chromium, 2 parts per million, comes from the rings. Typical range is 0 to 3 ppm. My result's normal, so no indication of ring scuffing. Nickel is 0 parts per million. Alloy steels would normally contain nickel. Mine didn't present any, so it's excellent. Tin is at 3 parts per million. This comes from bearing overlay. Typically, you'd be in the 0 to 5 parts per million range, so my range is normal. Lead is at 1 parts per million. This comes from bearings. Typical would be 0 to 10 parts per million, so my ranking's very good. No bearing distress. Silver is at 0 parts per million. Not really applicable to my engine anyway. That's why I have a 0 rating. So those are the engine wear indicators, and I'm feeling pretty good about the results. Let's jump into the contamination indicators next. So first we have silicon. Mine came in at 21 parts per million. This can come from dirt ingestion or sealants. Typical safe range is 5 to 25 parts per million. 21 is slightly high, but from what I researched, very common in GM trucks. If this was 35 to 50 parts per million, we'd suspect an intake leak or poor air filtration. Given that iron isn't spiking, this does not indicate abrasive wear. So right now it's safe, but we'll continue to monitor it. So next is sodium, 2 parts per million, so low salt. It would be a coolant indicator, but anything under 20 parts per million with no potassium spike equals safe. So check mark for no coolant leak. And again, my fuel dilution was a no, so check for that. And my glycol coolant was no, so check on that, which means I don't have a head gasket issue. So next we'll jump into the additive metals that were present. These don't indicate where, they show oil formulation. Now let me preface this with saying that you could always send in a virgin oil sample, which I didn't do, and then they'd be able to baseline that, compare its additives with the additives that are present in the used oil. I didn't do that step, but we still have some results, so let's look at them. So my zinc is at 870 parts per million, my phosphorus is 712 parts per million. That's right in the general neighborhood that you would see in modern 0W20 oils. Calcium is at 1042 and magnesium is at 507, which suggests a detergent package that leans more magnesium heavy than some calcium heavy formulations. Based on my research, 0W20 data shows that calcium and magnesium can vary widely across different brands. Molybdenum was at levels of 143 parts per million, and moly can vary from 0 to very high levels depending on whether the oil uses it as a friction modifier. So some of the other metals that I haven't mentioned because there was either a 0 or a very small measurement. Manganese was at 2 parts per million. That's usually a trace alloy signal. It's not something you would chase down at a rating of 2 parts per million. Vanadium was at 0 parts per million, which for my vehicle, 0 would be normal. I think it's more if you have concerns with heavy fuel contamination based on what I read. Barium was 0 parts per million. Barium's usually an additive marker in some oils. 0 is pretty common. So that's my lubricant inspection report in a nutshell. And again, I just have to keep my eye on a couple things. Iron, we want to make sure it doesn't push up to a crazy number like over 100. And then our silicon levels, we want to make sure that we don't get above 20. So really that's the story. We have no contamination flags to worry about. My wear rating is low, which is really good for the internal mechanical health of the engine. We're going to keep an eye on iron and silicon when we get the next test done. And we're going to make sure that intake's tight. So next steps will be to get a sample out of Mrs. DONSLIFE's Escalade. We're going to send that away for testing. And she is also around the 55,000 kilometer mark. I'm very curious what her 0W40 supercar oil comes back with when it comes to engine health. Remember, she passed the PICO inspection. My vehicle was part of the not recalled vehicles. Now, because I'm out of warranty, I'm running the Mobil 1 FS 0W40, which is what's prescribed for our Escalade now. I thought I would try it out and see what a non-recalled engine does and how it behaves and what the health check says when we get that oil back. And then I want to compare the supercar results from the oil that's in the Escalade right now. And then probably Mrs. DONSLIFE will have the FS 0W40 put in her vehicle. So we're going to have a lot of comparisons available to us in the next few months. And then from all of that, ultimately, I'll be able to answer that universal question for at least somebody that lives in my area of the country, which oil is best for these 6.2 liters? I don't really know if we'll arrive at that conclusion, but I think I'll have some data that I can make an informed decision. So if this is something that interests you, there'll be a playlist that's just dedicated to all of this 6.2 liter L87 recall information, and these oil changes and analysis will be all a part of that. So there's a playlist just for that. But either way, I'll always give it to you straight with no exaggeration. So on that note, if you found this video informative, hit that like button, please consider subscribing, and we'll talk to you next time.